make me write right-handed, my left-hand dominant brother. In the mid to late 1960s my family was Catholic. So of course as kids were sent to Catholic schools. My older brother, William, was primarily left-handed
at a time when it was verboten by the church,
as was common at the time.
Corporal punishment, public shaming etc. were the norm for disciplinary issues. Being very bright and a bit OCD, my brother had a hard time dealing with some of the more cruel nuns. Back then it was standard thing for them to whack your knuckles with a ruler if you weren't showing proper respect, or not paying attention, or if they just wanted to hurt someone. For the first few years he tried writing right-handed. He got pretty good at it. He said it gave him headaches if he did it for too long.
Eventually he only wrote right-handed in class.
Any other place he would use his dominant left hand to write. The nun caught on
and read him the riot act about the left hand is the hand of the devil,
and writing with it would damage his chances of getting to heaven.
As punishment,
she required him to write a 15-page essay but only with his right hand.
So William takes the exercise home and does a fantastic job. 15 pages of some dry subject laid out, cross-referenced and indexed. Really top-notch for a 6th grade student. Only problem. While he did only use his right hand, he wrote the whole thing in mirror script. 15-page essay.
The only way to read it was in a mirror. The nun blew a gasket.
Sent him to the principal.
Who freaked. Young man,
you need to conform. I did exactly what you wanted. I wrote it right-handed. But you did it reversed. No one said I couldn't.
You just said I had to do it with my right hand. That was his last month in that school. He transferred to public school soon after. Added info.
He actually became ambidextrous whether he wanted to or not.
This event was an accumulation of years of abuse from these types of authority figures to my
recollection.
My parents didn't know how bad it was, or didn't have the skills to deal with it. He did have serious emotional issues later in life, quit high school, joined a MC gang for a while,
some drug use, suicide attempt. Most of these I was oblivious to.
I was 14-ish, younger, and had my own ADHD issues.
He eventually got some help,
got his GED and moved on somewhat, though he converted to Jehovah's Witnesses big time after marriage.
Kinda turned into the same type of authority figure with his son. Treated my sisters as second class because was the eldest male,
etc.
We haven't talked for years.
Personally I am terribly right-handed. My left hand is good for holding things, but not for fine detail. 3 sisters are right-handed too.
The thing is, so many geniuses,
artists, musicians and so on are left-handed. A lot of the people I admire most are lefties.
We really should start appreciating those of us with special skills. Seems from the upvotes and comments below this struck a bit of a nerve with you all. Thanks for letting me rant. Because beating up children definitely gets you into heaven. My parents were told I was disabled because I was a lefty. But not to worry.
The school were fixing it. They were told in no uncertain terms that any change in my natural writing would lead to the local newspaper being called in.
The greatest shame at the time. And the head reported for bullying a 4-year-old. Still a proud lefty. I've said it before. I'm left-handed.
My 2 brothers are left-handed, as is my mother. In my mother's time in school they tried to make her right-handed, including hitting her and tying
her left hand to her side.
When I started school they weren't allowed to hit us, but they did try to make me right-handed.
Second day my parents arrive in. My mother 5'0", 110 pounds soaking wet. My father 6', 2,250 pounds tug-o-war pulling army man. My mother got in the principal's face and said he better get used to having a left-hander in school. 'Cause there were 2 more behind me, and if she heard of them trying to make me right-handed again, she'd do jail over it.
My father told me years later in the moment he was truly terrified of my mother and took a step back.
Happened to my grandfather in school. And it wasn't for religious reasons, it was the right thing to do. So he was just 100% ambidextrous his whole adult life and could write with both hands at the same time. As long as it was the same thing and the papers were both well anchored. I was one of those forced to be a right-handed person.
I'm mostly ambidextrous now. I write with both hands. Knit both left and right-handed.
Comes in handy with short row knitting. And crochet right-handed.
I use whatever hand is handy at the time for most tasks. To be honest, drove me ape when I was little.
However,
my stepmother's rules won out. Joke's on her though.
She's not my stepmother anymore.
And I will go to her funeral someday to make sure she is dead.
My middle son is left-handed, and we had a preschool teacher and his kindergarten teacher try and
force him to write with his right hand due to them just being lazy about not wanting to teach a
left-handed kiddo. I had to go down there and tell them in a not-so-nice manner
that he's left-handed,
and to stop treating him like a damned pariah because of it.
He is slightly ambidextrous now due to the early BS.
But for important things he uses his left hand.
It's also a throwback to my genetics, as my dad's side of the family are the only ones that are left-handed
going back damn near what seems like 100 years.
In the mid-70s I attended a Catholic school and had an older nun teacher for the first and second grade.
I was left-handed and my handwriting wasn't the best, so I was made to write right-handed. Now I can write with both hands. I don't recall her saying anything about being left-handed being evil or anything like that, but it
didn't help my handwriting any.
It just got tidier as I got older.
I do remember her actually being very kind.
Unlike one of the other nuns I had teaching me at that school. But yes, this was definitely a thing at Catholic schools. I had this concern when my little girl started school.
She was definitely left-handed and I didn't want anyone to attempt to change the way she functioned. On the testing for admission to this kindergarten I brought up my concern. The teacher, God bless Mrs. Vincent,
she stopped for a moment,
looked me in the eye and picked up her pen and wrote my concerns on the admission papers in her left hand.
Woot.
My child is now a well-functioning,
creative and smart woman
who can read and write forward and backwards. My mother, 66,
left-handed,
also had a similar problem growing up. I wonder if there's a link between left-handedness being evil and the Latin term for being left-handed, sinister. My left-handed mother had to eat with a special spoon that works only with the right hand due to a
curve.
She calls it the torture spoon, and she managed to eat with it with her left hand still by bending her left arm over the face and use it backwards. I'm a lefty. Had a teacher in first grade that would chastise me for writing with my left hand while, learning how to write. She'd yell at me to use my right and I just couldn't. It wasn't comfortable and my writing wasn't legible at all. Eventually, she demanded a parent-teacher conference with my mother and demanded she make me use my right hand. My mom tore her to pieces. We were in the DFW area of Texas, in the 90s. Anyway, after that, I no longer had to use my right hand for anything I didn't want to use it for. Thanks to my mama bear. When my son was a toddler, he would naturally pick up things with his left hand, and my husband would immediately switch it to his right hand. Toys, writing utensils, eating utensils, didn't matter to my hubby as long as it was in his right hand.
My son is left-eye dominant and had trouble in sports, so he steered away from them.
He struggled to write, and to this day as grown adult starts all his letters backwards. He can write decently with his right hand but is ultimately more comfortable just typing.
I never made the Catholic connection with my hubby's behavior until now. He has repeatedly apologized to our son for his behavior, but the damages were already done. We have a granddaughter now who is starting to write and will switch back and forth between hands
while writing.
Hubby told her the other day to use whatever hand she feels like using. And I pity the fool who tries to tell her different. I'm left-handed.
I went to a public school.
No problems about it until I hit 3rd grade.
This evil-ass teacher decided that I wasn't going to be left-handed anymore. She had a wooden ruler that she would smack me with across my knuckles anytime she saw me use my
left hand. I dealt with this for about a month.
I finally got sick of it and decided I was going to use my left hand.
She hit me so many times that day that by the end of the day my knuckles were broken up and bleeding. When I got home, my parents asked me what happened.
I told them the teacher wouldn't let me use my left hand and kept hitting me. My dad,
who was 6'4", 250 pounds,
puts me in the car and back to school we went.
To this day I still remember the look on her face when he marched up to her and explained that if she ever hit me again about using my left hand, that he would come back and put her ruler where the sun doesn't shine. They would tie my grandfather's left arm behind his back in order to force him to write right-handed. Happened to my mom's mother, too. They were straight evil to children in those days. Good old days, my ass. I went to Catholic school in the 70s, had a few classmates that were left-handed. No one said anything, including the nuns. It was only mentioned when teaching cursive and helping with holding the writing instrument. Glad I got the post-Vatican II nuns. My 1st grade teacher tried to teach me to write with my right hand. I don't think she was being malicious. I think she just didn't notice I was left-handed. It didn't work very well. I ended up teaching myself to write. I hold the pencil wrong and never learned the trick of slanting the paper on the desk. My writing callus is on the 3rd finger, not the 2nd. Years and years of trouble in school because of how much harder it was physically for me to write. So, yeah. Thanks for fighting back. Being an atheist won't get you into heaven. That's the bloody point, you daft bint. I'm a lefty, and while no one tried to get me to switch for writing, my kindergarten teacher noticed that I used my right hand for scissors and spent a healthy chunk of that year trying to get me to use my left. Waste of time for her because I refused to conform. Although I'm strictly left-handed for writing and right-handed for scissors, I'm pretty ambidextrous with everything else. My uncle went to Catholic school and everyone knew him as that kid who beat up a nun. What actually happened was the nun was beating his knuckles. He felt it was unfair. So he grabbed the ruler away and stood up quickly, putting his face into her face. The nun promptly fainted in shock and everyone thought he had punched her.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.